Hey everyone, it's been a while, but new cameras have been released and I've been compelled to talk about them. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, that video that's camera related. I'm mainly concentrating on writing films and work and life just happens. I don't get paid for any of these videos, so if I don't have time or if I don't have the mental or physical capacity, I just don't do one. I don't do one because I mentally and physically just can't. So anyway, let's talk about cameras. Obviously, the reason why I wanted to react was because of the Panasonic G9 II, which realistically should just be called the G10. It's a new chassis, a new sensor, and a new processor. That's more than enough to call it a completely brand new model. It's definitely not a Mark II of the G9. This camera goes directly head to head against the OM1 and the Canon R7. So it is a speed demon. It's the camera that I wish the OM1 is. It doesn't kill off any of the video specs while maintaining a lot of the features that wildlife, outdoors, and some sports photographers love to have. It has human detect autofocus, which the OM1 still hasn't been updated with. It outperforms the OM1 in video autofocus, and for the first time ever, it actually shoots faster than an Olympus, and it's about as reliable with the pre-production firmware, mind you. The OM1 can shoot 50 frames per second raw with continuous autofocus, but that's only with a handful of lenses. The G9 II, you don't have that problem. You can literally shoot with continuous autofocus at 60 frames per second with any of the lenses you put on it. I think the advantage that it has is it actually has DFD contrast autofocus that works with the phase detect layer. So that version of a hybrid autofocus is really proving to be a great thing for Panasonic. Sure, it's probably not as good as Sony and Canon, but it's definitely better than Fuji, and it's about as good as the OM1, and sometimes even better from what I've seen. And that's not bad for having a hybrid system for less than a year. They'll get a lot of comments saying, well, the OM1 has a brand new sensor, so there's still a lot to learn. In my honest opinion, that's kind of bullshit. That's a really silly excuse because the G9 II is a brand new sensor. The S5 II has a brand new sensor, and Panasonic's doing fine being able to keep up with the firmware they needed to keep to make those good. Hold on one second. I'm actually also working, so hold on. All right, so what was I saying? One complaint I keep hearing is the size of the camera. It's honestly not that much larger than the OM1. It's a little bigger, that for sure. It's just not as large as a lot of people are complaining it to be. The OM1 is already pretty bulky of a body. With that said, though, people that are like me that have kept the EM1, my cat is so loud. That they've kept the EM1s for so long, they're gonna notice. I was able to notice because even just a couple millimeters was enough for me to throw me off. But this is what happens when a camera becomes an extension of you. Most pro photographers don't change cameras every year. They typically will keep the same camera for, honestly, for as long as possible. The guys I shoot with, they still shoot on DSLRs, honestly. So knowing your camera is significantly more helpful than the actual features that it has. There are still several advantages that the OM1 still hold. It still shoots 120 frames per second raw without continuous autofocus. It still has live ND. It still has a faster processing high res mode. It has live bulb, which are all super useful. And it is slightly smaller, probably more comfortable for someone like me. But the G9 II does have pre-burst and live comp and high res, and the high res mode on Panasonic has that extra processing that eliminates those weird artifacts or movements. Or even little things, but these are the main features that I use. So in terms of feature sets, the G9 II is a very enticing camera for me. It does the main things I need plus better video. The one thing that the OM1 has an advantage of, it's a pretty big advantage, is it's its sensor. The sensor out of the OM1 has a lot more potential. It's a newer type of design, being BSI or backside illuminated, and it's a quad pixel. So it can be faster and it can be more accurate. The only thing that they need is a team of engineers that can really push out the needed firmware updates for it. I kind of wish they can work with Panasonic engineers because they'd probably get a better job done getting the most out of that camera. I mean, look at the G9 II. The DR boost alone gives it better dynamic range than the OM1. Um, and this is coming from a FSI sensor, so a front side illuminated sensor. If the OM1 had something like it, then it would be over. The OM1 would be able to process that information so much faster. I think, sorry, something has got in my eye, but I think it would have the same dynamic range as most of the full frame cameras, if I'm being honest. Oh, hold on 1 second. Hopefully, the G9 II can light a bit of a fire under OM's asses. I know they're a smaller team, but this is a business. You adapt or you die. It's really that simple. I'm actually shooting this. I'm shooting this on an E-M1. It stopped recording for some reason. I don't know why. The card's not full. Battery's at nearly 100%. So I don't know what's going on. But I figured I'd shoot this on a Micro Four Thirds camera because I'm talking about a Micro Four Thirds camera. So there goes that. I don't know where I stopped or where it stopped recording. I just kind of noticed that it wasn't recording. That's annoying. Okay, so I think I was talking about marketing. I didn't actually look back, but I'll just start there. I was talking about there's a couple things that the Panasonic kind of wasted with the G9 II. If they instead use the S5 body over the S5 II body, I think that'd be able to sway a lot more of the OM systems user base. The S5 original is smaller than the G9 II slash S5 II, and it's actually a little bit smaller than the G9, so I think that would be able to sway a lot of the OM1 users. The other thing I think it's a bit of a waste is the fact that it's being marketed as a fantastic sports camera with the new autofocus system and the human detect tracking and 60 frames per second with continuous autofocus. This is kind of an amazing sub $2,000 sports camera, especially for alternative sports like surfing, skating, snowboarding. I used to love looking through skating magazines. I used to skate in my youth, but I love seeing the entire trick being performed in a spread. Well, with this camera, it can do 60 frames per second with continuous autofocus. So you wouldn't even, photographers of that type wouldn't even have to plan those types of shots anymore. Those shots were super planned and really intricate to perform. I've done a couple and they were not really that easy. Sure, the human detect may need a little bit of work, but most of the reviews that we've been seeing are early or pre-production firmware. It's going to get better, and unlike OM systems right now, it's going to get that firmware much more quickly and those improvements much more quickly. Now here's the bummer. As great as the G9 II is, I don't know if it's actually going to sell well. I hope it does, and I want any new Micro Four Thirds camera to sell well, but it's being marketed as an amazing wildlife camera. How many of the wildlife YouTubers actually got this camera? Not everyone watches all the camera channels. Most people have their specific cameras, specific favorites, and people that are interested in wildlife photography will tend to watch and listen to wildlife photography YouTubers. That's the literal basis of niche marketing. If I were trying to market this camera, I'd send out more units to sports photographers, outdoors photographers, wildlife photographers. I'd even speak to the people that don't have anything to do with photography at all. But those people would have wildlife-based channels or outdoors-based channels. People that aren't really in the camera space at all. But they still have to use cameras for their content or for their work. The camera space is so small, and it's ignorant to think that they're the only people that are buying cameras. They're not the only ones that buy cameras. I know a lot of people that have to use cameras for work, but they're not watching camera YouTube channels. Those are the ones that you need to grab. Those are the people that Panasonic needs to grab. Instead, they should send out a bunch of, what they've done is send out all the units to a bunch of the regulars, which is fine. You need them. They need to do what they do best. and they all do great, but perhaps a voice or two in the field that it's being advertised would hold a lot more merit. I don't know. Maybe send out some units to a bunch of Olympus or OM users, former users that shoot sports at the not so professional level. Someone that shoots for their local hockey team or indoor football league. Someone that shoots for the state parks department. I don't know. Just a thought. I don't know who'd qualify for that, but maybe, they should keep their eyes open for someone that fits that very criteria.